Hey, so this morning I sat down and had a conversation with Naomi Mitchell from Omiindustriies, a very cool modular synth maker based in the US. And we've known of each other for a couple of years, we've chatted off and on, and I thought it'd just be a good opportunity to sit down and look at like an overview of what making modules is like, where the ideas come from, how it all kinds of has come together, specifically for Omiindustriies. We cover a wide range of things, everything from what the scene's like in the States, coming up with ideas, turning those into modules, the kind of joint philosophies that we have behind making musical instruments and tools for people, accessibility, imposter syndrome. So I hope you enjoy this chat. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope it will be of use to people interested in modular synths, interested in making modular synths, people doing their own thing. All right, go for it.
All right. Hi, my name is Naomi Mitchell, or just Omi, as some people call me. I am a designer, user, and educator. I primarily uses modular synthesizers. I've been running my company, Omiindustriies, since 2017 I started. Released my first module in 2018. Followed that up with two others, and now I have two others that are well on their way.
Amazing. And what, talk to me about the name. Obviously it comes from your name.
Yeah,
but the spelling is different.
The spelling is different. So it's OMI, like Omi, and then Industries, but instead of one I and Industries and the end of Industries, it's two I's. And basically that goes back to I was registering the Gmail Omiindustriies at gmail.com. And with one eye it was taken, and then I was looking at it for a bit, and I added the second eye, and I liked the symmetry. Unfortunately, not many people know how to spell it, or Omni Industries isn't often substituted spelling.
Yes, so I am forever seeing the two eyes as a single eye.
Yeah. I changed my logo, actually. There's little underlines under the two eyes.
I saw that you had a t-shirt. I saw you had a t-shirt that spelled it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so talk to me about what made you start making your own modules? What made you start wanting to do your own stuff?
So that kind of started, I had been using modular synthesizers for a couple years at that point, gotten into eurorack, and there was some stuff that I wanted to get in my rack that didn't exist. So I was kind of like, well, I'll do it myself. I'll make something that I want. And that's kind of like the first aspect of designing any module, for me at least, is, hey, is this something that I want to use? Does this solve a problem I have when working in modular synthesizers? And that's kind of like my first stage of my design process.
And did you have a background in electronics, or were you like teaching yourself that at the same time, or?
Yeah, I was kind of teaching myself. My first three modules are kind of, the first two use just logic circuits, so that it's, not a high level of engineering, but as I've moved forward. But no, I studied illustration, art school. I went to art school for that, and that's kind of helped me in terms of like putting together graphics and that sort of stuff, but also kind of just the thing I kind of got from art school more than like being able to draw is just having a critical eye and being able to analyze things and say, okay, does this make sense conceptually? Does it make sense compositionally? That sort of thing. So it's kind of helped me in a way that a lot of other people who make modular synthesizers don't have that artistic background. They're coming from a purely engineering point.
Yeah, I've definitely found, because my original degree was in animation and interactive media, and I've definitely found just like the visual spatial thinking of there's so like a bit of UX design, a bit of how things will just fit together in space, a bit of like how you make something that looks cool that other people will want, and how you communicate. Because one thing that's always like interested me, in general, but also about the modules that you make, is that when you design electronics, when the actual circuits are not exposed, like it can look like anything. You can make it look like anything. You know, there's no reason to lay it out a particular way. And often I see stuff that is just like totally confusing and impenetrable, because there is no relationship between what is happening on the back end, especially if it's digital, especially if it's, you know, got some kind of like microcontroller core in there. The front could look like anything. But so you feel like having had that creative background has given you like an interesting way of working with and building synths rather than...
Yeah, I would say so. I kind of do not quite as extensively as he did it, but the kind of Don Buchla practice of designing a panel first and then going into the electronics. He always started with a full, mock-up of the module before he even started the electronics. And I don't do the full thing, but I know I have an idea and I go, okay, and I open up Illustrator and just kind of play around with some ideas of, okay, what can I fit in this size panel? What looks good together? What is a little too small? And then from there, kind of the design kind of evolves from there. And then I use the, go back and forth between the original visual design and then the electronic aspects of it and see what works and kind of that's
cool. I didn't know that was a Buchla thing, because I'm totally in the same boat. Like, I think about it as like an object, as like a real thing in the real world before I sit down and work out like how I'm actually going to lay this out or make this fit, or
yeah, totally.
I feel like there's something about coming from the design aspect of it that I think, for me at least, just like gives me all the unanswered questions and gives me all the problems that I need to solve, rather than I feel like maybe if I just came from purely so maybe this is me projecting, but I feel like looking at your first few modules, I definitely feel like you read a bunch of those like CMOS cookbook.
Yes, I have it on my desk.
Hold on, I've got exactly the same one. Yes. Yeah, bro, I have exactly the same books in here. Yes, yeah. A lot of when I was first getting interested was just like poring over those books and just being like, shit. All right, okay. So here is this chip, but it is also like a concept. Like, it is not just here is an XOR gate or here is a blah blah blah. Also, it's also like, here is a concept of how you can combine and manipulate data.
Absolutely. And then kind of like bringing that in terms of like what works with these kind of like abstract ideas of these chips, and then bringing that, and how does that, how can you interface that with a larger eurorack system?
And how do you explain to a user without like, because I mean, this thing is full of, truth tables and timing diagrams, and when you sit down to like play a piano or a guitar or any other instrument, you don't want to have to open up a manual of timing diagrams to just be like, okay, cool, here's how I
Yeah, and that goes back to our talk of the user interface and how you kind of distill these concepts into a way that makes sense, where someone can look at it and go, okay, yeah, I plug into here and I plug out of here, and this is what I get. That's kind of like, that's part of the process in terms of educating people how to use these things that you've designed.
And what for you was the kind of tipping point between being like, this thing doesn't exist that I want, and this thing doesn't exist that I want, and this would be cool as a product that other people might like or that other people might want?
Yeah, so it kind of started when I first did it. I was collaborating with someone on the electronics side of things, and it first kind of started as a DIY project. I think Modular Addict still has some of the original PCBs. It's gone on for a couple different iterations from that original DIY project.
You're talking about your first module, the
Yeah,
is
the
it dual shift
dual
register? Yeah.
yeah, dual digital shift register. And that kind of that one was actually inspired by Pete Edwards' Casper Electronics modifications to Rob Hordeg's Benjamin.
Mm.
That's he kind of had this idea, or he had these modifications they did where he added like a clock input, an external clock input, and then a outputs for the different gates of the shift register, and that was like, oh, that looks cool. I want that in eurorack, and I thought it was a cool idea. I thought other people would think it was a cool idea. I started talking. The first person who kind of made me think that I could release it to a wider audience was actually Robert Lowe. Makes music as Lichens, and he's a really talented musician. And he had seen this module, and he was in Chicago from New York one day, and was like, "Let me come check it out." And he came by my apartment, and I showed it, and he was like, "This is awesome. Like, I want this when you release it." And I was like, "Okay, I'm on the right path. I'm doing something. Here's this musician whose work I really like, and he's excited about my work."
Yeah, unreal. Yeah, Casper Electronics was like a big inspiration for me too. Kind of in that. Oh yeah, I went through this period of like before I ever got to slogging my way through books like this and Art of Electronics, all those like very very dense books, kind of stuff like what was it, Casper Electronics, a bit of Beavis Audio Research.
Mm-hmm.
Come across
Yeah.
stuff like that. Just these, they weren't even drawing schematics the way you would if you were an engineer. They were drawing schematics in this really like visual kind of way, where like the chip looked like a chip and the button looked like a button and the pot looked like a pot, and this really like and doing all this like cool weird stuff that just didn't have any of the math or any of the that I just found like really kind of like exciting and accessible to just be like, oh, sick. This like, I mean, with the Beavis Audio Research stuff, it's just like, oh, this one chip can be like 6 oscillators. Oh, sick. Whereas like the stuff I'd come across before that was like, if you look at something like Moog schematics or whatever, it's just like, oh fuck, all right. like what the fuck is all this stuff? There's just like hundreds of just letters and numbers stuck on the ends of transistor symbols. Like, what am I even looking at?
Yeah.
So super cool.
Yeah, those are hard. And like finding like the old Buchla schematics, they're all like done in pencil and like with notes all over them, and it's like really hard to penetrate when you're first starting out. And then getting like a nicely illustrated and designed, like, attach this here and do this here, and you can make a little oscillator. It's kind of refreshing when you're first starting out.
I definitely found, like, very early on, there really wasn't much between, like, success and failure. Like, you've got some stuff on a breadboard. Like, I'm specifically referencing the Beavis Audio Research stuff. There was this whole thing. Oh, was it that? I think it was called, like, Fun with CMOS. But it was spelled, like, SEAMOSS. Yes.
Yeah, that one.
And it's like, if you accidentally got the wrong size cap, or if you tried to do something that wasn't on the page, the difference between success and failure could just be like, oh no, this doesn't work at all. This does nothing now. And then like, I was on the one wrong pin and now everything works perfectly.
Yeah.
But I just found
it oscillates at a different speed than they're using it at. Like if you have the wrong capacitor or whatever, it's just like, oh, okay, it still works. Like, I guess I get the right one and see if it works that way.
So you went straight. Did you? I started off in like a kind of noise area. I started off like making noise boxes and stuff. That was very just like, doesn't really matter if it works properly. Doesn't really matter if it doesn't. It sounds a bit more like you kind of jumped straight into here's what I want, here is a thing.
Well, I started, building noise boxes from other
Oh, okay.
designers, and I built one of the Casper Electronics devices and some devices from a synth company that shall not be named. And
not anymore, yes.
yeah. And then kind of from there, got more into eurorack, and then from there, kind of it's like, okay, I want to make eurorack modules. Kind of skipped over the noise box, sort of like designing little noise boxes, but I have thought about going back, kind of circling around there and making a more a module that you don't have to have a full eurorack system to make use out of.
Yeah, nice. So, talk to me from your performance, wanting something that you couldn't do, and then building something from it. Talk to me about how that process works, like in terms of design.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of like start thinking about what I like, what I need, kind of what would be useful in terms of performing or designing, and then I don't know, the process kind of goes straight from what I think is interesting into starting the design process, and then I don't know, I end up with a lot of ideas, and some of them are half done, and some of them make it to a finished place. But I use my modular system fairly regularly, if not to record, but at least to mess around with after a long day of work. And over time I've been like, I would really like one, something like this, and then it kind of moves on from there to the design process.
Do you find? Sorry, I guess I'm more mean like, do you find that you want something, you design it, and then how satisfied are you once you have made a module and released it and put it out into the world? It's kind of frozen in stone, or like frozen in this time. What's that like?
I mean, it is kind of like, once you put something out there, it's kind of committing to this thing. And I had, especially starting off, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. Is this something that's good enough for people to get? Is it kind of like, am I doing the right thing? But once you've kind of gone from the design process to the production process, you're kind of committing, and it's putting your art out there. It's kind of scary. It's kind of intimidating, especially when you're first starting. Yeah.
I've always found the pricing to be incredibly difficult in terms of like the whole imposter syndrome thing, where it's just like I feel like you as a designer can know like a bit too much and just be like, yeah, but this is just like a chip that I've put some shit in front of. This isn't like... How did you get around that? Because I feel like, unlike me, the first kind of modules and stuff that I saw out in the world felt more reasonably priced. Whereas I totally like stuffed up the first like Kickstarter and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I try to. There's a couple of my modules that I've put out at a particular price, and then kind of reduce the price a little bit after kind of thinking about it more. It's hard to set it. It's hard to set like a price. I'm having some difficulties with my newest module, figuring out exactly how much it's going to cost once I go to production. So
I always like find a bit of a battle between wanting to make something accessible, and because I do all my own production stuff, and also like wanting to like have enough time to actually make it. Like I feel like if I make stuff too cheap, then that's great because then people can get their hands on it, but it's not great because then I'm probably just gonna like burn myself out a bit and I won't produce that many. But if you make it, but if you've ever read any of those kind of business things, it's like here's the amount, and then, times 2.5, and then you add the da-da-da, and you do all this kind of stuff. You end up with this, like, enormous number, which I feel like is good in terms of, like, paying you for your time, but then there are so few out in the world, and often the only people who can get them, are quite, like, well off and have these big, like, ridiculous systems, and they'll probably never even really use your module because they'll be too busy getting the next thing.
It's kind of like, even though I know I sometimes feel like, synthesizers are too expensive, but if you actually figure out the amount of time and effort you put into making something, you're not making minimum wage. You're making like, like $1 a day or something like that, or not like that, but like for the amount of effort and if you were building this for someone else, if you're not just building it for yourself, you would make the money that the business advisors are thinking you should. But it's kind of like, I think I was talking to someone, Brendan from Mordax, and he was like, I wish I got paid minimum wage for this job.
It's interesting how much how much it feels like the kind of synth industry as a whole is really kind of split between people who do it kind of like for the love of it and are not making a lot of money, and then these very big kind of like established companies who I really wonder like what percentage of their actual business is in this field. Because you look at big like multinational companies like, I don't know, Roland, or I don't know, Korg, or all these other companies who produce a lot of different things across a lot of different industries, and surely like they have their wide appeal things that are like big money makers. But then it's interesting that they're also still, or have come back to like the modular scene, or have come back to, and I wonder, is it because they have the full kind of like China production system set up, does it actually make sense for them more financially than it does for us? Because wasn't your first module turnkey? Didn't you like do a turnkey? Did you build them all? Or I thought you got them.
Yeah, I built them all.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I did build them all. Up until now, I've built all of the modules by hand.
Oh, cool. I thought you used Dark Place.
I was, and then I was kind of like, I could just do it myself, and I was kind of in between projects, so I was like, oh, why don't I just make these myself?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And how did you find just sitting there, the kind of like mind-numbing process of just repetition building modules?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of meditative. I throw on a podcast, and I use all my products are SMDs. Put the solder paste on, and then populate it with all the resistors and whatnot. And that's it is fun in some ways, and I think I will continue to make some of the modules by hand, but I have the new module is a little too complicated to mass produce myself.
Are you using an oven? Are you using an oven, or are you using
a heat station?
Ah, cool. Yeah, and then just melting it.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I only just got myself a SMD heat station. Man,
it's really handy.
I've been living in the past.
Yeah, I got some advice. I got a lot of advice early on from Ross of Muffin Thief Modular, and he was like, "Okay, spend the $120 on a soldering iron, spend the $80 on a heat station. You'll thank me."
Yeah, I wish I'd.
And then.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh no, nothing. Oh,
I was just gonna say, yeah, I wish I had started kind of investing more in that. I went through a lot of those cheap ass. So we've got this thing called J-Car over here, which is I don't know, maybe like Radio Shack before Radio Shack went out of business. I went through so many of their crappy soldering irons. Just just to get it again.
It's more expensive to be cheap.
Yeah, without a doubt. And also, something I've definitely found about nice equipment is it feels a bit like a guitar. It's like if you sit down on a $50 guitar, it's not going to sound very good, and you're not going to think you're very good, and the music you make's not going to be that good. But if you just that's something that you really want to do, and you spend like a little bit more money, and you get like a nice guitar if you can, then all of a sudden it's like, I'm alright at guitar. This actually sounds okay.
Yeah, totally. I was using a, like just plug into the wall a soldering iron, no kind of control over the level or anything like that. And it was like, no, you need to. If you actually want to do this, you actually have to invest in the tools to make it possible.
So after you did the dual, it was a dual shift register, but it also had like, I'm casting my mind back, it also had some cool kind of like recycling stuff at the top. Like there was an XOR gate at the input or something. So it wasn't just a literal matter of two.
Yeah, it was, it was the 2 4-stage shift registers, and then the fourth bit is XOR'd with the incoming data, so it kind of, a lot of times it kind of recycles the data over and over and kind of makes these repeating patterns. But that module has actually since been discontinued with a potential for a successor.
Yeah, cool. So wait, what did you move on to after that?
After that, I was looking at kind of CMOS logic chips, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I do a lot of clock divider based sequencing, and that sort of thing. And my first kind of thought was this just breaking out for CMOS logic chips, and each having 4 channels, each with these 4 different types of logic, and it was like 16 HP. It was pretty big. And then I kind of, as I was messing around with it, I decided I wanted to change it a little bit, and I moved. So it's 2 channels. One channel has 4 simultaneous logic types, and then the other channel has those 4 simultaneous logic types, but they are put into a multiplexer. And then you can use switches and gate signals to change which logic type is present at the 2 outputs.
Cool. So kind of like, did you look into those kind of old like analog computers, like those educational kind of learning computers?
No, I hadn't really looked into those.
No, yeah, maybe I'll like send you a link after or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like that sounds very in the realm of like those cool old 1970s, 1980s, like analog computers.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It's kind of like programmable in some ways. And that's, kind of how it got its name. Originally, it was going to be, this giant 16 HP module. It was going to have the 2 channels of the multiplexers, but I decided to condense it down. So the first one was called Colossus, because that was the first programmable computer. And then I went with a smaller version, and in the X-Men comics, Colossus is a character and has a younger sibling or daughter named Ilyana. So it's like the daughter, Little Colossus.
Yeah,
that's kind of the name.
Yeah, that's great.
That's for the name.
And so that's out in the world as well?
Yep, that's out in the world. And then after that, I made it's called an R2 RAR, which is pretty simple gate to CV generator with an attenuverter in it. And that module was kind of my first time that I had put kind of high-speed op-amps in. I had just been using kind of TLO-74s and that sort of thing. And after building a number of LZX DIY modules, I kind of was like, I should do this. So it functions as kind of, you can use it as like a gate to CV converter, but it also kind of works as a weighted mixer with an attenuverter in it that accepts, video rate signals. Although it's the output range is kind of limited because of the way I've done the attenuverter is done with kind of a nonlinear response. So there's a bigger center position that you can kind of zero out the modulation. So that kind of, if you're using only 1 volt signals, then it's, you usually have to crank it up to the max level to really get it. But it's it's been fun. I have one in my audio case and one in my video case.
Yeah, are you moving into video? Are you thinking of moving into video? Because I know I have seen you perform video. I have seen you working with modular video.
Yeah, the next two modules are intended as video modules that kind of fill both niches. So one is just a 5-volt to 1-volt converter, level shifter. So pretty handy bringing audio eurorack modules into video eurorack modules. And the other is kind of a multi-function comparator, track and hold / sample and hold, VCO / VCLFO, and a chaotic voltage generator. So it's kind of a multi-function, does a lot of different sort of stuff.
Cool. And has your engineering education throughout this been just self-taught? Have you just been like...
Yeah, it has been self-taught. It's been a lot of looking at other people's schematics, and that one has been like definitely the one that I've got. It's going past just CMOS logic types and kind of more into doing analog engineering, especially for the chaotic signal generator. I was looking at a lot of Ian Fritz and Andrew Fitch from nonlinear circuits and that sort of stuff for that thing, and I took kind of an existing chaotic circuit and made a few changes to it, and that's kind of its own sort of it's a kind of interesting chaos. It's not particularly random unless you get it into the right kind of configurations. A lot of the time it's pretty periodic, but it is kind of interesting in that way that it doesn't get super random, which is something that I really like. I think it's more musically interesting and kind of more interesting for your ear to kind of hear repeating patterns and patterns that emerge within a sort of semi-random stream of signals.
Yeah, rather than just like straight noise, which has no kind of thing to latch onto as a listener.
Yeah, it started as I've been working on this for over a year now. It started originally, I was just like, I'm gonna make a sample and hold, and that's it. And I was like, I'll add noise, and then like a year later, here I am, gone from 6 HP to 20 HP.
Yes. Yeah, and how long? How many prototypes sort of do you think you make? Are you going from breadboard all the way up? Because I've kind of just skipped, so I don't really breadboard anymore, just because the stuff I'm doing just has too many chips and they're too small.
Yeah, I would breadboarded parts of it, but in terms of prototypes, I think I'm on the 5th or 6th at this point. This is definitely, my earlier modules are definitely like 2 or 3 iterations, and then it's pretty good at that point, but this one has definitely taken a lot more time to make it work.
And so have you just been like, so you said you've been doing like a lot of self-learning in terms of the actual, not just the circuit design skills, but in terms of the actual, technical like layout skills and all that kind of jazz. Like where were you like getting that kind of information? Because I was just watching like YouTube videos after YouTube videos of people just like using EagleCAD and trying to work that shit out.
Yeah, the layout and the design process in terms of like making the PCB is just kind of like a lot of practice doing it. I've gotten pretty quick. I can usually get a layout done in like a day or two. So it's kind of going back to like the visual kind of learning skills that I kind of learned when I went to art school. So it's laying out the PCB is probably my favorite part of the whole process, just because it kind of turns into like a fun puzzle game almost, where it's like, okay, I have to make all these connections and arrange these different things in a way that makes sense, and it's fun fun for me.
Cool. Are you in Eagle CAD or like KiCad
Yeah,
or Dip Trace or anything?
I'm an Eagle.
Yeah, great. I keep trying to like go to KiCad because I just keep hearing really great stuff about KiCad. But every time I go over, I just cannot like kick having been an Eagle for so long.
Yeah, and I've been, not just using the free version, actually paying for it. So now it's like sunk cost fallacy that I have to stay with it.
Yes, yeah, totally. I was one of like the unlucky / dumb people who bought a copy before they went to the subscription model.
Oh.
And so I kind of got bitten by that. It was just like, yeah, great. Oh, I'll shell out all this money. Great. It'll be a tax deduction. And then, a few months later, they were like, oh, you could just have it when you need it and when you don't need it. And just pay $30 a month or whatever. I was like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, totally.
So Australia's like very spaced out, and it's like there aren't that many synth manufacturers here. There are no like big companies or anything. There's no Moogs or Rolands or whoever's kind of based here. What is the scene like in the States? I feel like I know just about everyone in Australia who makes synth modules. I feel like I know every single one of them. So.
Yeah, I can't speak to the state of things everywhere, but I'm in Los Angeles, and there's a pretty healthy scene. There's a number of companies that are here, Noise Engineering and 1010 and 1010 Music and Sleepy Circuits and a couple others. But it's pretty well known. There's also, in Los Angeles, I think 3 or 4 or 5 stores that sell modules. You can kind of like make your way through those, and and there's a Module on the Spot started in Los Angeles, so I was briefly involved in organizing that, but I kind of wasn't a time commitment that I could keep up with.
That's a regular. That's like a regular synth night, or that's a.
It was. So Module on the Spot was, I haven't done it in a while, obviously. It was this kind of free outdoor modular synthesizer concert. So they would invite, 4 to 6 people into a park and, play for however long. And, there'd be like 50, 100 people there on well-attended ones, but actually the original ones were it was organized by Eric Roden Cheslick, who now works for Make Noise, and Bana Hafar, who's a really, really great modular artist. And it was kind of like a renegade show on the concrete banks of the Los Angeles River, and security would come and like kick them out. And eventually they did have to relocate to a park. But it's nice. It's a nice little, it's kind of like or it kind of was the monthly modular event. You would go there and you would see your friends that you don't really see anywhere else. And it was fun. And there were a couple other modular synth nights, dedicated or kind of undedicated. I feel like a good amount of shows that you'll go to, if they're electronic music in Los Angeles, there's a pretty good chance that someone at least has like a hardware box of some sort, if not a modular system. So it's pretty, or it was, it's hard to say what it is right now, but it's pretty, it was like pretty good environment. If you're interested in modular synthesizers, Los Angeles is a pretty good place to go to in the States.
And how have you found that compares with video and like the video scene? Because I've been pretty interested in originally I was doing like animation and VJing and stuff when I first kind of left home and was doing all that kind of stuff. And then I moved away, I was doing a lot of audio stuff and then designing kind of audio stuff. But then I really feel like I just got kind of like pretty like sick of the scene in audio around here, and pretty just like sick of the online communities and audio. And the more and more I felt like I got back into video and doing like cool weird stuff with video, the kind of cooler I felt, the kind of like cooler and nicer and like more accepting I felt like the scene was. I feel like audio still has a bit of that guitar thing going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of what my wife refers to as train collectors, who are just,
Yeah.
like dads who have too much money, who get a bunch of synthesizers, and then,
Yes.
like, I feel like, I mean, really, the two reasons I'm on Facebook anymore is Omiindustriies stuff, or the Video Circuits or LZX community Facebook groups.
Yeah, totally.
And, I've felt, I have been in the past, or I guess I am still, a moderator for like the Eurorack synthesizers group, which has like 20,000 plus members, and I'm always kind of like bummed whenever I go on there. And then you go to the video groups and it's like, oh, here's someone posting some cool videos, or like, I mean, unfortunately these days there's a lot of where I want to buy video synthesizers, but there aren't any available.
Yes.
But people are, you got the video exchange and visible signals, and, more people are kind of Sleepy Circuits with the Hypno. More people are kind of getting into it, kind of like building out this whole system that Lars and LZX kind of started, which is pretty exciting. I just got, I just got in the mail another module from Bastion, Syntony. Those are really cool modules, and it's growing. There's more people getting into it. There's the people doing the kind of glitch machines with like the enhancers and mixers, and then there's video synth people, and they're also kind of like coming more together, and kind of it's becoming more accessible, which is really nice, and I feel like is kind of refreshing going from the audio world to the video world. Yeah.
Do you feel like it's partially the size of the scene, or like what do you think it's like? Oh, sorry, hold on. Or do you think it's like? You think it's like that? There's so much more room, like in a small scene, for there to be. I don't know. Not sure what I'm trying to say, but it feels like in the early days of like audio synthesis, there was this really cool kind of weird sort of stuff happening, and it felt like these kind of like big personalities and these kind of notoriously like nice people
Yeah.
were like
yeah,
more visible.
I
They
think,
weren't as drowned out.
I mean, yeah, I think that, I mean, there are definitely cool, interesting people doing stuff in the audio realm, but I feel like video stuff is such a video synthesis and video processing, and that it's such a uncharted territory, wherein there was like video synthesizers, but they went out, or like early video equipment that went out even more so than like modular synthesis, like audio modular synthesis. It died down a little bit in the 80s and the 90s, but it's really like there's like Behringer is making,
for sure.
Eurorack modules. It's a big market. Whereas like the video synthesis stuff, it was a lot of just like Lars digging up old schematics for old video equipment and bringing that into the modular realm, where it's really this kind of like experimental art form, and it's pretty like it's a lot of weirdos, which is nice. There are a lot of audio Eurorack weirdos, but there are a lot of kind of normie audio Eurorack stuff going on, where I feel like most of the video stuff is like outsider, weird, sort of like experimental artists and video artists who are using the equipment. So it's kind of like a smaller kind of community, which is nice, I think.
And maybe like more of a kind of art school vibe.
Yeah.
Rather than coming from like music and coming from, the very like you said, train collector. Around, in Australia we think of it a bit like there are those dudes who are like super they're always like really metal, but they're like super into guitars, and they're super into like guitar pedals, and there's this like oh, well, this has the best, blah, 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 and we da-da-da. Oh, the pickups on the ja-ja-ja-ja-ja-ja. And so, that, yeah, they have these things and they build these kind of systems of collection, but it's coming from this very, like, different kind of place where I feel like the video stuff I see is, like, has a very, like, kind of art school vibe. It has a very, like, people want to, like, share stuff and work together and be like, oh, how did you do that? Or what is this thing? Oh, have you heard of this thing?
Yeah, there was like I think it was in Arizona. Well, it's all online this year, but what was that called? There's this really big
VidCon?
VidCon.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
did something for that. That was really great. Where, like, that was days long and filled with promoters and that sort of stuff. That was really cool. And then there's also like when NobCon comes back, they have a big like portion of the event that is kind of dedicated towards video synthesis. And then a lot of the time, I guess there's more people doing video synth stuff for a larger community, just with like online events like Twitch streams for audio. There's more people doing video work for people doing audio performances.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very... It feels like it's got this really cool vibe, and I'm hoping that it's not... I'm hoping that it's not just gonna kind of be like, oh, the audio scene felt like that in the 60s and 70s, but now it's like, it's just a business or whatever. I'm hoping that, and maybe in vain, I'm hoping that because the technology has been so superseded in a way that the audio technology never was, I feel like the society is like so much more accepting of the aesthetic, like the audio aesthetics from the past, and willing to sort of like make the leap to the actual hardware in the way that I don't think people are with video stuff. I think people like their VHS effects that they can just like click a button and apply. But I don't think a lot of people really have like the time or patience to sit down with.
Yeah.
The actual
Yeah,
stuff.
I think it's even more so this kind of like I've heard stories of people at NAMM who are like, sell this to me, or like what problems does this solve? Kind of thing, where it's like video synthesis is even more so than audio synthesis. This like you could do it in 5 seconds in After Effects, or you could spend all this money and time making these little patterns and stuff with your video gear. That's very like, I mean, I guess it does have some follow over into like VJing if you're doing a live set with some of this stuff, but I mean, it's definitely one of those things where it would be a lot easier to do if you just had a computer.
What? So you've had a NAM booth.
I have not had a NAM booth, actually. I have been a NAM. My wife was working the booth for 4MS, so I got to kind of go and hang out.
Yeah, nice. Yes. Yeah, they felt that thing you just said about sell this to me just like felt a little too close to home. I just like had a few too many of those interactions of just like, why do I care? What is this thing? Why do I give a shit? Why should I buy this thing from you? And it's just a bit like, oh. Yeah, I feel like you're not going to buy this anyway, so...
Yeah. I feel like most people at NAMM who do that have kind of wandered in from the guitar section.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so how... I've only ever been to like very small kind of stuff like that. Like I had a booth at the Tokyo Synth Fest. It's got a special name. But that was just like one big room. And just so like, and like had a really kind of small, lovely vibe. And I don't think there were any. I don't know. Even like the Korg table was like the same size as my table, and it was just like this nice kind of vibe. What about NAM? Like, how does
NAM is kind of nuts, and most modular people have kind of stopped going to NAM. You have your bigger companies, like Noise Engineering or 4MS or that sort of thing. But even like Moog doesn't go to NAM anymore. Make Noise doesn't go to NAM anymore, and just go to kind of the smaller events, because there's a pretty good amount, or there were, and hopefully will be, smaller sort of events. The manufacturers, there's some in New York, there's, NobCon in Chicago, there's MoogFest in Asheville. There's one, Synthplex, I think it was called, in Los Angeles. They did it 2 years ago, and they were going to do it last year. I was supposed to do that. That's a little bit smaller. It was kind of funny. They were really looking for modular people, so they dropped several $100s off their entrance fee.
If you were doing modular stuff, yeah, nice. Do you think that this back away from big companies like Moog and Make Noise is just because it's not worth it? Just because they're in competition, the audience isn't there, and they're in competition with.
I can't speak to Make Noise, but I know Moog had kind of events in Los Angeles that kind of week. A couple of years ago, they had the Moog House of Electronics, which was set up in a house in Los Angeles, around NAMM time, and they were kind of showing off their stuff. And I'm not sure why Make Noise canceled, but I think kind of. I think for a lot of the time it's just not worth it. I don't think most people doing modular are have people that stock them, and most of the people at NAMM aren't shopping for eurorack gear. So I'm not sure.
And maybe it's a bit harder to communicate, harder to sell. Something like a guitar is such a obvious thing. You can look at the outline or the silhouette of a guitar and know what it is. I doubt there's anyone really in the world who doesn't know what a guitar is. But I can imagine, there's a number of kind of extra layers of explanation or information that needs to go out to be well, this is like a guitar, but you play it like this. Oh, but also.
It's like a keyboard, but there's no keys.
Yeah, and it's been broken open. You have to make every decision inside the keyboard yourself. And if you're into that, then that's great. But I was lucky.
That kind of grows. Oh, that kind of goes back to the sell this, or what problem does this solve, sort of.
Yes, I was super lucky when I was doing this booth in Japan, where it was just pretty much everyone who was there got it, and they were there obviously because. It was a modular synth fest, so of course they knew what was going on. And what was really nice about that compared to maybe some other, I've done I don't know what you'd call it, maker fest kind of stuff as well. What I found really nice is that you can just get so much deeper with people who they're there for a reason, they know what it is, they know where they're talking. And you can actually get this exchange and get good ideas from people and actually get good feedback on your stuff and actually take your stuff to people and get feedback from them, rather than if the first question everyone asks you is why this, why do I care, what is this thing?
Yeah, I went to, when I was still doing DIY, but I was very excited about kind of getting my company and the name out there. I went to MoogFest and NobCon. The thing about MoogFest was that it was you didn't have to buy a ticket or anything to come in.
Oh, cool.
So you would just, cool for the most part. It's ever, people would come in and they'd be like, what is this? And I would start explaining, the shift register, the dual digital shift register, which is kind of not a simple
not a simple concept to begin with.
Not a simple concept thing, and you have to explain, okay, you get this and this and this, and then you can get this, and you'd start, and a minute in, you could just see people's eyes glaze over, and just kind of, but you would still have to talk. And I mean, NobCon is definitely a little more, it's focused, it kind of touts itself as the largest synthesizer convention. I'm not sure how they came. I think it's the largest dedicated, because there are larger conventions, but they're not dedicated just to synthesizers and modular synthesizers. But pretty much everyone there knows knows what a modular synthesizer is, knows like, a little bit about them. I was planning on going again, but everything shut down. So.
Yes, yeah, the world is like very up in the air at the moment, which I feel like has been, in some ways, has been like quite good for my business. But I feel like it's starting to get to the point of where it's just like people are just like a bit, like their attention is so stretched. They're just like a bit. When the first kind of like lockdowns were happening in Australia, everyone was just like, I've got all this free time on my hands. Can you send me a kit? Like, what should I look at? What should I get into? And now people are just like, I'm like a zombie. I have no time for for anything other than just like trying to not go crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there have been a pretty big uptick in terms of how much people are buying right now, that I've seen. People are, it's been pretty popular. People are bored, and buy more synthesizers when they're bored, apparently.
Yes. This has been super great. Do you want to like close out by, you were talking about your kind of most recent module a little bit. You want to kind of give me like the rundown on that? You kind of...
Yeah, give me one sec.
Yeah, of course.
Where's my... It's plugged into everything. Alright, so this is not the final version of the panel. I was actually ordering the next iteration today, actually. So.
Oh, cool.
So this is it.
Ooh, sick. It's huge.
It's huge. Yeah, it's 20 HP. So it's I've called it Between Everything and Nothing, which I affectionately refer to as the bean.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, so it's it's a oscillator, VCO, VC, LFO, and then there's a comparator with threshold level and CV input, and then that goes into a sample and hold, and the VCO also feeds into this chaotic circuit as like a kind of driving the chaotic circuit, and then that is normaled into the sample and hold, which has a level control, and it's a correlation control. So it's kind of a, basically you have the signal going into the sample and hold, and then the output of the sample and hold is routed through this potentiometer with the chaotic signal on one pin, then the output of the sample and hold on the other pin, and then you can kind of sweep between them, and it on lower potentiometer positions, it kind of clusters the voltages, and kind of makes it again less kind of random and a little more predictable.
Cool. Oh, that's really sick. And you're imagining its use. You're imagining its use as sort of a CV source.
Yeah,
so it's a CV audio.
Yeah, well, in video you can use the comparator as like a hard key generator.
Yeah, nice. Yes.
And then you can also sample, and then the VCO, there's a number of jumpers on the rear that I've added that kind of change the level of the incoming CV into the oscillator to boost it up from a 1 volt signal to a 5 volt signal, so you can sweep the whole range with a video source, and the comparator output level, and the VCO range. So in the audio mode, it's between kind of roughly low frequency going up into audio rate, and then in the other position, audio rate. And then in the video mode, with the video jumper, it goes from, you get your low frequency into audio rate, and then flick the switch, and it goes into video rate frequencies. You can use it for horizontal and vertical modulation. But it not all of the outputs are within the video range, and changing all of the outputs was a little much, so I made a companion module, which is also in there.
Like an expander.
But yeah, no. Well, it's the level shifter.
Great.
So you can use it for anything else, but if someone's using this for a video, then I would suggest they get one of those, or like an LZX bridge or something else that kind of brings down some of the signals into video range.
Rather than just getting those caps. Those hard caps.
Yeah, clipping it. Yeah.
Ah, cool.
But yeah. That's the new module. That should be ordering PCBs today, and I'm hoping I'm coming to the end of the design part of things, and we'll hopefully I'm getting this one actually, the SMD work done, hopefully in China from a PCB fab house, and then soldering them all together.
Brilliant. Have you considered doing Kickstarters, or are you still like very committed to?
Yeah, I mean, I have. My wife and I have been saving some money over the last, for a while now, and that should be able to cover the costs. I was thinking of opening up pre-orders, but I haven't made the official announcement, so this might serve as the first announcement of it. Yeah, I'm hoping once I have a working prototype, there'll be a general announcement.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I love how much is going on there. I'm really into modules that have kind of not really, but like the kind of pre-patching stuff going on there. Like when you're able to get a complete voice, and when you're able to get like a bunch of stuff kind of put together, I feel like it gives you more of like the designer's kind of influence. It becomes like less of a tool, like a level shifter or something that just performs a function, and becomes like more of an instrument, or more of like, here is my creative input as a designer.
Yeah, it's kind of, it doesn't, have the same functionalities as something like a Benjamin or something, one of those kind of chaotic system, but it kind of exists kind of in the spirit of something like that, of this holistic, random kind of chaotic instrument. That is kind of does its own thing. It can be self-contained, because that's the thing about the first 3 modules. You had to you have to have at least 3 or 4 other modules to make it to make them work properly. Whereas this, you can kind of get and put in your rack, and straight away you get stuff. Because I've had a lot of people who aren't necessarily into synthesizers, but are just excited about having a woman in synthesis, and they're like, hey, I wanna get your modules, and it's like, well, if you're just starting out, you really shouldn't.
Totally, especially
it's kind of a hard thing to do.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, especially in the realm of like modular video, it's like, I mean, it's definitely true of modular audio, but definitely in terms of modular video, it's like, oh well, yeah, you could definitely get my module, but make sure that you've got an output encoder, and make sure that you've got a screen, and make sure that you've got this and this and this and a case and this and this. That's the biggest issue when you run into with video. Unfortunately, it's definitely, you have to have more than a couple modules to really get into it. Unfortunately, it's kind of I feel like that's maybe why I'm pursuing a lot of the kind of trying to make standalone stuff a lot at the moment that can maybe also exist within Eurorack. Because I think that's one of the reasons that I like that you have taken these things, these different elements, these different tools, and like push them together in a way that it sounds like with the normalizing of the jacks, you can use them separately if you wanted, in the same way that you could get a Pittsburgh modular voice, and you could take everything out individually if you wanted and use the LFO by itself or whatever. But I like this idea of kind of compression, of like putting stuff together into this kind of like self-contained thing. Do you ever imagine that you would do like, you would make a self-contained version, even just with like a piggyback module or something that powered it? Or...
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that, but that could be good. I mean, if I did that, I would probably talk to 4MS about that, with their pods. But I haven't necessarily, I mean, we have plans for a standalone device, but that's kind of been on the back burner for the moment.
How do you find being just one person? Because it is like my constant struggle of just being like one fucking person and being like,
yeah,
whilst I work on this, I can work on nothing else.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely difficult being a one-person operation, but you know, as my friend Ross from Muffins Eve told me, no one will work harder for you than yourself. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like that's like a good place to leave. Thank you so much for having a chat with me.
yeah,
It's been like it's been like
thanks for
super interesting seeing the kind of path that you are taking through designing these modules. Do you think you will have do you think at some point you will have a full system? Do you think you're going to be one of those people who has a
I don't know if I'll have a full system or not. I have to make an oscillator of some sort and a bunch of other stuff. So full system, we'll see. We'll see.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you so much. I genuinely
Yeah.
appreciate it. Do you want to send me the cat's feet are going off? Do you want to send me just like send me a link to all your stuff that you want me to kind of like attach to this and promote to this? Obviously the website and Instagram and that stuff. But if there's anything else you have that
Not at the moment. Yeah, just website and Instagram, I guess, for now.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
This was
super
great.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, very appreciative of your time. And I think, maybe just over an hour. But yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you
Great.
so much. Have a great Sunday.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, have a great Monday.